this leads to somatic psychology. Is that exactly what you're just talking about? And can you, for listeners who've never heard of that term, how do you explain it? How's it different from just talk therapy?
The word soma basically just means body. So somatic psychology is really just a fancy term for a psychology that relates directly with the body. Okay, so usually what that means is somatic psychologists work directly with the nervous system. That's a simple way to understand it. So we're mind body specialists. We're not just talking about making interpretations about the family of origin and what happened developmentally and in your history, and interpreting and talking. And that's the distinction between a somatic therapist and a regular run-of-the-mill therapist, in the sense that we could just be talking heads forever and be just making interpretations about family of origin or culture of origin and things like that. The somatic oriented therapist is bringing the work into stuff done. So like process work. So, hey, let's do stuff. Let's get up in gravity. Let's do some breathing exercises. Let's not just talk and make interpretations. Let's do stuff. So I like to give people homework so that they can exercise their brain, exercise new habits and stuff like that. So it's very pragmatic in that sense. So let's not just talk, let's do stuff. Let's retrain your nervous system and your body to perceive differently, and to run different habits. And that means directly interfacing with the body. And that's how it's different.
Yeah, and I want to let you know the reason why I love this topic is because in my own experience, healing from trauma, I realized so much of it is in your body, like releasing just different energies or different tense areas. There's so much that has to do with the body that I was like, oh yeah, just talking about your thoughts and just working on the mind is not enough, right? Like our nervous system involves the entire body. So tell us about the nervous system and how it reacts and how it stores traumas.
The classic way of thinking about it, or the easy way to think about it, is to start with the image of the gas and the brakes of a car. Okay. Which is really just a metaphor for talking about the two branches of the autonomic nervous system. Autonomic nervous system is the nervous system where you don't have to think about or tell your heart to beat, right? Or tell your heart to beat faster when it's in a moment of anxiety. It's automatic. And so that's the gas when we get into a fear, and when we're afraid or something like that, the gas goes on. All sorts of responses happen in the brain and the rest of the body to mobilize the body to either fight or flee. Okay, so that's that, when you hear fight flight system, that's the sympathetic system of the autonomic nervous system. That's the gas. And then the brakes is the parasympathetic system. And the parasympathetic system reduces the pacing of your heart rate. So it slows down your heart. Okay. It's equated with the exhale cycle of the breath. It kind of just slows things down. So gas and brakes are a good way to think about it. So you have the fight flight system. So something scary happens, and the body, like in 120 milliseconds, just like zing, steps on the gas. Okay. And we're ready to mobilize, to fight or to flee. Now, in really dangerous situations, there's another F word that's added, which is the freeze response. Okay. So the freeze response is like the body is mobilized to move, but it can't really move. Okay. And so the parasympathetic system, the brakes, isn't just about, okay, I feel safe and my heart rate can go down. There's also an emergency brakes. Okay. So when things get really, really dangerous, there can be kind of like this dissociative response. We hear dissociation a lot now in discourses about trauma. And that's the emergency brakes, where the body is like, okay, and this happens in just millisecond a millisecond scale. It goes from this freezing to a rapid assessment about how dangerous the situation is. If it's extraordinarily dangerous, then the emergency brakes will be pulled. Okay. And we can have things like fainting. We can have like an extreme freeze where the body starts to go into kind of a collapse. But the long and short of that is if the emergency brake gets pulled, then we're going to start to see some of this dissociation stuff. What is dissociation? It's like not feeling like things are real. It's like, this kind of a profound spacing out dynamic. So the thing is that if trauma doesn't get cleared, then the body will just basically continue to project these defensive states. Too much gas or too much emergency brake. Okay. The nervous system will continually replay it on a loop so that things that are less and less objectively dangerous trigger the loop to keep on looping.
Yep.
Right. So the heart rate will go up, the gas will go on, and we could, it could be something that is radically blown out of proportion, something that's actually not dangerous. And this is what we see, right? Where something not that intense or not that objectively scary or not that dangerous will then get the trauma loop going. The gas will go on or their emergency brakes, and then it just keeps on running and running and running. And then the consequence of that, of course, is that the body just generally does not feel safe. Okay, the person doesn't feel safe. And then the work becomes providing an environment of safety again so that the loop can get broken and the nervous system can stop projecting danger into the future in perpetuity.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So you're saying that emergency brake is also part of the sympathetic nervous system?
Parasympathetic.
Oh, parasympathetic. Because sympathetic's fight or flight.
Sympathetics are fight or flight. That's the gas, the get up and go juice. Parasympathetics are generally when we're feeling safe and good, the rest and digest or the stay and play. But then the other side of the parasympathetics is an emergency brake.
I see. Just to protect the body for some reason.
Yep. So if you're a saber-toothed tiger and you're coming after me and your jaw is right there, your teeth are right there, the emergency brake will be pulled on me. My body will be flooded with the inner heroin that everybody has, the opioid system. And it's kind of like nature's compassion in that way. If I do die, it's not going to hurt as much if I have all these opioids going through my body. So that's the emergency brakes. Emergency brakes, we could die. So we're going to dissociate because this is just going to be too painful to feel.
Yeah, I understand. So you're saying a lot of people experience traumas of all different, I guess, sizes, right? You have like big things and you have like mini traumas, but ultimately it puts you in this loop until you can release the trauma. And tell me, what does it mean? What does it look like or feel like you release trauma, right? Some people might say, "Yeah, I'm fine, I'm healed." Like that was in the past. Tell us about how do you know you've released trauma or what is the process of releasing it?
There's like the EMDR method. I have a bunch of different tools that I use. So EMDR is a method that I was trained in that I do use, kind of like my own style of it. And what that means is that pretty much, or what that looks like is that we use a kind of bilateral stimulation approach, which is like basically, have you heard of these brain gym exercises where you stimulate the different sides of your body back and forth, and you do like, pat your head and rub your belly at the same time?
Mm-hmm.
That's a brain gym exercise to kind of support neural integration between the two hemispheres of the brain. So we use a method of stimulating the brain back and forth by either getting the eyes moving, or we use tactile stimulation. So like, somebody taps on their knees, for example, while holding a traumatic memory in mind. And that's a way of getting into the memory networks of the brain to basically change them. Because the weird thing is that every time we access a memory, it changes. Did you know that?
No. What do you mean? Like we are changing the memory?
Every time a memory gets accessed, it changes based on what's happening in the atmosphere of where it was accessed in. So if I say, okay, Aileen, think about a time when you were 5 when you were really happy. Okay. And then you think about a time when you were 5 when you were really happy, and you tell me about, and we get into the detail of the scene, which is fundamental to my work, hashing out the details of the scene, because I want to be working directly with the brain. And the brain is very interested in what's happening spatially, what's happening around you. Okay. So, whatever method I'm using, I want to be in direct relationship with the brain. And if I want to do that, that means that I need to know that the brain is very spatial. Otherwise, it's just kind of pie in the sky. So here we are, and we're in either a good memory or a bad memory. And the first step really is to make it real for the brain so that the memory can be changed. Okay. So, what does it look like when a person is, when this memory is a traumatic memory? And what does it look like when it releases? One of the principles, and I don't know how much time we'll have, but I'll give you one of the, maybe one or two principles.
Yep.
One of the things that's seen a lot is what I call the thwarted impulse. Okay. Now, often in trauma, a lot of traumas are relational traumas. Okay. They happen in relationship, abuse, neglect, where you see that a person kind of, they have their agency taken from them. They're subjugated. They're raped. Horrible things happen, and they don't have the agency to do something, to say something. So the body has an impulse to do something or say something. Okay. But because of the environment and because of the abuse, the nervous system and the body doesn't have a chance to communicate and express and these are intense, right? These are intense impulses that have to do with getting to safety. Okay. So you can see where I'm going with this thwarted impulse thing. Like we could take an example of, there's an abuser that is coming in from the left. As I said, the nervous system and the brain are very specific. So, all right, they came in through the left. So I noticed that the body in session is kind of like, I'm dramatizing it a little bit, but this is what happens with bodies, because, brains and bodies are so specific. They're living a kind of protection against the left side, because that's where the abuser came from. So we get to the scene, right, where the abuser came in through the door on the left. Okay. And their original impulse was to scream, but it wasn't. They didn't have an opportunity to do that. So their scream is held. It's held in the tissues of their body. It's held in the tissues of the throat and the jaw. Yeah. And how does that show up? It shows up, if that trauma isn't cleared, then that person over time will often it'll get worse, and they'll stop, expressing their truth.
Yeah.
And they'll subject themselves to more abuse because they'll lose their boundaries and so on.